All right, once you have glued your front and back on with those little spool clamps, let it dry, take those off. Obviously where it overhangs a lot, we're gonna take what's called a flush trim bit and just use this to trim off all the overhang. Just make sure that our flush trim bit that we're using here has a good ball bearing on it that should freely spin. Get that plugged in and then just flush trim and do a little bit of sanding on the outside as well. So this little ball bearing on the bottom is just going to rub on the outside as the cutter will cut the overhang flush with the outside of your ukulele. Just flip this up, turn it on. We'll just get the whole thing all the way around. If you want to clamp this down to a bench top a little bit so it doesn't move on you, it's probably a little bit easier to do that. Don't want to tighten it too much so that it breaks it, but just get it clamped enough just to hold it fairly firm. We're going to get both sides, just flip it over, get the other side. Okay, so I've got majority of it all flush all the way around. Little fuzzies, sometimes there's little bits of glue from when you glued it up. We want to do some sanding on here. We're not doing our final sanding just yet because we're going to do a whole bunch more to this later. So just try to get some of the glue off and some of the little fuzzies off, but understand this is not your final sanding yet. I'm just going to use some 150 grit sandpaper to do the sanding. It's a good idea to get some carpet down or something just to protect this so it doesn't get all scratched up. And I would probably consider that from here on out on the project, because anytime you're working with the body of your ukulele, use some carpet or something just so every time you set it down you're not going to do any scratching on it. Again, we don't need to worry about the faces too much. Just we're looking at getting the edges where we flush trimmed it sanded really well, and just along the top edges around here is fine. Another little thing I like to do is come to one of these bench vices. Again, put the carpet down in there so you don't damage the ukulele, but just do a little bit of pressure on here. Don't crush it, but just enough pressure that'll hold it firm. When you're sanding, that might be a little easier to get some of these profiles. Getting in these inside curves is a little tricky. You can do it with the random orbit sander. You just kind of have to go right in here with it curving. You could use a little spindle sander or something like that, but we just got to be careful not to be too aggressive on this. Again, we're just trying to sand it smooth, removing glue. We'll do more sanding later on. Again, so I'm not worried about getting the final sanding just yet. Just trying to get smooth transition where all those edges were flush trimmed around. If there's a little bit of glue remaining, it's okay. We're gonna be doing more sanding later. So just get yourself cleaned up pretty good, flush trimmed, and we're ready to do some of our end and neck cuts here. We also have some binding we're gonna put around on the outsides and a few other things to this as well. Again, take care of it. Try not to scratch it up from here on out. Good to go.